montage explains that not everything Elijah does shows him as being fragile. Elijah's strong emotions cause people to believe that he's fragile, when really he is a compassionate and brave child. Being called fragile is a negative description, but being called compassionate and brave are positive descriptions. The scene begins on Mrs. Holton's stoop. They have just learned about Mr. Holton's death. Mr. Leroy and Elijah are hanging the poem about Mr. Leroy on her door. Miss Holton comes out, and she gives Mr. Leroy a box.
Sister Emily, I appreciate you giving me this here box. It's some fine work, I swear. And in light of your loss, I say we's even. But for now, I can't deal with nothing but money.
I understand. Here, open the box.
Miss Holton, what is this?
It's $2,200 in gold, Mr. Leroy. It's what I was going to buy John Holton with. You need it more than me now.
Miss Holton, this here, it'll be my wife and both my children. I can't turn this down.
I ain't expecting you would.
I can't turn it down. I can't turn it down. I can't turn it down.
I pick this scene even though Elijah is not speaking at the moment. He speaks before and after this scene. He is present in the background watching the two adults talk. In the end, Elijah sees Mr. Leroy and Mrs. Holton crying, which causes him to start crying. He is affected by other people crying. Their emotions are transferred over to Elijah. This scene shows that Elijah is not fragile but a compassionate child. When my mom punishes my little brother, Evan, he always breaks down into tears. I agree with my mother by putting him into timeout because he's always breaking my stuff and jumping off furniture. Seeing him cry makes me start to cry. This is a little like the emotional transfer that Elijah feels throughout the story, which is why people think he is fragile. I do not see myself as fragile just because I am emotional. I see my strong emotions as a positive trait that I can relate to people and maybe provide them comfort. The scene begins in the forest after Mr. Leroy takes Elijah there to talk to him about going to Michigan together. So Mr. Leroy, there's slave catchers in Michigan. How are we going to stop them from trying to kidnap us?
Boy, the way you talks, no one in this world gonna think you've ever been a slave. All they got to do is take one look at you, and they know you're born free. And if we've got to use this pistol, then we're going to use this pistol.
So that means you're going to force me to come with you, sir?
I'm terribly sorry, Elijah, but a ball just started rolling down the hill ain't going to stop. And we both going to Michigan.
So that means I ain't got no choice, sir?
I'm a fear not, son.
Great, I was just making sure. If Mom and Pop found out I was going to Michigan on my own accord, they'd skin me alive once I got back. But I can tell them, and tell them too, that I got kidnapped and I ain't going to be in as much trouble. Thank you, sir. I picked this scene because it shows how Elijah traveling to Michigan makes him brave. Instead of being scared, which would be an emotion I would expect, Elijah is brave. While reading this part of the story, I felt that if I was in Elijah's shoes, I too would travel to Michigan. The trip would be an opportunity to show people that I am not fragile. I looked at this as a decision that would change my entire life. If I were to stay in Buxton, I would always be known as fragile. But going to Michigan would change the way people see me forever. This is probably what happened to Elijah. The trip would probably change how others see him. I remember being younger and, after watching Scooby-Doo movies, I was too scared to be alone upstairs in my room. Crying and begging someone to go upstairs with me at night frustrated my family. When I saw my little brother doing it alone, I realized how my parents saw me. They saw me as a scared little kid. I made the decision, which for me was a difficult one, to go upstairs at night alone. The fear was still with me, but I needed to prove myself to my family. I did it, and I proved I was brave. The scene begins in a stable in Michigan. Elijah just told Miss Chloe the fake story about his mom losing her daughter.
So, what do you think we should do, son?
Ma'am?
What can me and you do that'll give your poor ma some comforting?
I was wondering, ma'am, if maybe you'll let me borrow your baby so I could carry her back to Buxton to show my ma how much she favors my sister. Confused as my ma is, she'll probably think this is my sister. She'll think she's getting one more look. I swear on my ma's head that I'll look after her real good. You saw how good I held her. And once I swear, I ain't got no choice but to keep my word. I swore I was going to come back, didn't I? I swear she'll be safe if you let me borrow her.
Child. That's just the thing that we can do. That's just it.
This scene shows that Elijah is brave because he is taking a slave child from Michigan to Canada all by himself. This is my favorite scene because it proves that Elijah is brave, compassionate, and caring. This is a dramatic scene because Elijah took a risk of being caught by a slave catcher. In the end, his work paid off and he got the baby to Buxton. After this, Elijah's family will probably not see him as a fragile boy, but as a brave, compassionate, and caring young man. I feel that if I try to do what's right, even if it is hard, people will see me as a good person. I was once bullied by another kid. It was very difficult for me to tell my teachers or even my parents. I felt scared, lonely, and depressed. When I finally told my parents, I told them I wanted to handle it myself. I just wanted the bullying to stop. I talked to my guidance counselor, and the bully backed down right away. The step I took to stop the bully showed that I was brave. I proved to myself that I could be brave in a difficult and scary situation.
I appreciate you giving me. You're looking at me funny. And if we got to use this pistol, then we're going to use this pistol.
They got back. But I can tell them, and tell them true.
Oh, me? I'm terribly sorry, Elijah. But someone farted. Who's stuck? And if we got to use this pistol, we use this pistol.
So that means you're gonna. Elijah's strong emotions cause people to believe.
That's all.